Good evening, and welcome back to Vegas October 1 Sounds. Tonight's just plain fun and games. I'm not going to talk to you about audio. I'm not going to talk to you about all the technical things regarding gunshots. But I'm going to talk to you about me. Why am I going to do that? Because everybody craves the intimacy of a personal conversation. And that's what this is going to be. This is going to be very personal and very intimate. A few decades ago, I was taking a vegetarian cooking class from a lady who also was a masseuse and artist and various other things. And she convinced myself, my wife, and another friend to take a weekend art class. And actually, it turned out to be a one-day art class. But anyway, she set us out in her backyard. We've got all our, canvases and brushes and everything ahead of time. She instructed us on what to get. And she put us out there on our easels and said, okay, I'm only going to tell you a couple things here. One is how to do eyes. And she showed us how to make the eyes look kind of real. And the other was to tell you to go to it. And in an hour and a half, I'll come back and see what's happening, or I'll maybe wander around. So she did. So I started out to paint, and everybody was doing a self-portrait. So I started out on this nice blank canvas going, holy crap. So I started out with all sorts of light backgrounds and whitish and colors and everything, and I just couldn't get anywhere. So finally I scribbled it all out and went with the old look of these sort of black velvet paintings you can buy in Mexico for cheap with the dogs shooting pool and everything. I decided to go with that look. So I did a self-portrait in that style. And this is kind of how I look. I have very curly hair. It was brown. It's gray now. It was brown and light brown back then. And generally speaking, that's my demeanor. So I thought I'd, share that since everybody to date hasn't had an image of myself. So what is it that all of us humans crave? We crave this, well, I guess you call it a belief in ourselves. I know I do. I like to think that I'm a good person. I like to think that I'm intelligent, if that matters. And I like to think that I'm caring, although I know I'm not at all times. I do know one thing about myself, and that is that I'm a lifelong learner. For me, the pursuit and the adventure of learning something new is really what it's all about for me. Not so much applying the knowledge, but the discovery aspect, discovering a new person, meeting a person for the first time and getting to ask them questions and watch what they do and learn how they do things, how they speak, how they react, how they engage, how they touch, all sorts of things. And that discovery process is just so exciting that it's intoxicating. And I realize that we're built that way for a purpose, but I don't really want to talk about that. And so for me, the other big thing in my life that I don't get enough of these days is touch. This humans crave touch by other humans. I'm no exception. And I think that there's an intimate and beneficial value to getting a regular session of touching, shall we say. And I don't mean that necessarily in a sexual way either, although that's fine with me too. But the biggest organ in our bodies is the skin, and if we fail to exercise that organ, then I think we lose a great deal of our humanity. So often we get stuck in our heads that it's ridiculous. And I think that's where society is these days, is we're stuck in our heads, what little heads some people have, and we forget to stop and engage in that touching of each other in a way that promotes our health, promotes our relationship with others, and gives us a general sense of well-being. Now, you can say, well, Richard, Why are you in Vegas? And, you know, it started out as the adventure of the discovery and also a quest for the truth, if such a thing really even exists. Truth is kind of nebulous for me. And it turned into a almost an addiction to not proving something, certainly not that, but to, I don't know what you can say, verify what is the obvious, reduce the irreverent and speculative stuff, because there's like so much in the world today which is in chaos, in my opinion. People want to believe and they just grab at anything, and few of us have the ability to rationalize the consequences of our actions to where we can stop the actions that we take which are detrimental to both ourselves and society, and focus on those which are um, constructive. Now, I'm not a organized religious man per se. That is to say, I don't regularly attend church, and I get extremely nervous around organized religions. A lot of great people in the faith community, but I'm just more of a free spirit than that. In fact, I think in one video I said that my mother had sent me to church with our neighbors when I was in like third grade, and I was regularly going to church on the weekends and whatnot. And I read the Bible, and then at some point I looked around what people were doing, and I compared it what I thought should be happening, and I said, no, this isn't for me. And it was a Lutheran church. Not that I have anything against Lutheran. Um, Pardon me, I was taking a drink of water. It's hot out here today in California. So anyway, and after that, I really started just doing my own thing in terms of, doing what was interesting, doing what was adventurous, doing which was physical, and enjoying life rather than constantly worrying about whether or not I was committing sin. And at fifth grade, I mean, what's the whole point of worrying about what is sin when fifth grade when you're really just, running through life blind, so to speak. But anyway, that's not to knock religions. I just find it annoying when people come on strong to me with such strong ideals that there's no room for alternate opinion, alternate experiences, or negotiation. A little bit about my father. My father is a true hero. My father was born in 1913. Now, this is not really my biological father. This is my stepfather. He's a Native American. I served in the Pacific Campaign of World War II. All of his brothers did, in fact. He, saved people. When he was growing up, he was very physical. He was into athletics, basketball, baseball, football, and he was a very excellent swimmer, horseman, and everything. And he saved at least one person that I know of from the beaches of the waves at Santa Cruz. And he went on as an enlisted man to receive the lieutenant junior grade as chief engineer of a cruiser. So, and then after that he got out and continued his training as a diesel mechanic and leveraged that into heavy duty mechanicking for various construction organizations and trucking outfits. And he was a gentle soul, a very gentle soul, and he was well respected. Moon was his name, and people generally liked him. And the one thing I learned from him several different things I learned from him is that to be a man or a person for him was to be motivated independent of his race. He once told me that if a man used his race, in his case Native American, as a crutch, then he wasn't a man at all. That a man was meant to go out and strive and survive in the world that exists without the crutch or benefits what others gave him. In other words, he made his own way. And I've tried to live by that, and I think I've done a pretty good job. I myself, am one of those quote-unquote deplorable privileged white guys, even though I grew up as a lower middle class My dad was in construction. We moved every year and a half. I saw a great portion of the United States and some overseas countries because of it, and I never once regretted it. Losing relationships every year was kind of tough, but anyway. And then once I got into high school, we settled down, and we stopped moving, and then Dad started moving around from job to job, and then he would come home on a regular basis. Um, my dad taught me, he loved to hunt. We'd go out every weekend, and when I was a young boy, I was the bird dog, and he'd hunt geese and quail and pheasants and ducks and all those sorts of things. And I remember having to remove those damn BBs from the birds after we got them. But anyway, and we went deer hunting and fishing and all that sort of stuff. I'm just the opposite, really, from my father, though. I'm more of an introvert, and I'm not much interested in. I was never much interested in sports. I love the physicality of running and biking and swimming and all that, but organized sports, again, just didn't motivate me. Why? Because it was so repetitive. It was so competitive and aggressive. What I really longed for was the quest at the adventure of discovery. And once you learn the moves in sports, then it's all about going out and competing against your fellow man. So I just naturally didn't engage in sports that much. Could have been very good. I was athletic, but I was not interested in organized sports. And so by the time I had reached my freshman year in high school, all my friends gravitated towards the sports and the clubs and everything. And me, I said, no, that's not for me. And I just separated from them and did my own thing. But of course, by the time I was in high school, I'd already become addicted to electronics and things that would eventually set my career into electrical engineering. And most people would consider me an extremely intense person, in that I don't really enjoy casual conversations, and I love to delve into the details, and everything is a mystery to me, a lifelong mystery. And I know in my heart that life is more beautiful and unfathomable than I could ever imagine. And that just kind of, gives me tingles as I think about it. And so to me, the existence of a benevolent creator of everything is a given. And it's not that the creator must follow the dictates and philosophies or scriptures, so to speak. It just is something that's out there. How that creator came into existence is probably something associated with emergence. That's another technical field that's fascinating to me. And so, believing in a creator, believing in an organized consciousness is a very humbling experience, and one that none of us should forget at any time. And that's a little bit of preaching. I'm currently, at this point in my life, I'm 66, and I'm taking care of my mother because she's 20-some years older and needs help. And that pretty much chews up the vast portion of my day. I'm retired, mostly, and on a fixed income, and I do the best I can. Some days are tough, some days are enjoyable, and some days just are. What's happening today in our world with regards to the politics and the Black Lives Matter and all these things, I find extremely distressing. And I find it extremely distressing because I understand the consequences of the actions of the people. And their objectives is basically to, in my opinion, tear down America, regardless of whether you believe in whatever the black movement is. It's the outcome of this will be to destroy and remake the principles and understandings of America as I grew up in. And so my resistance to that change is large, as are, most old people. We all want to have the status quo. When I was younger, I did not, engage myself in the hippie culture. I was a pretty serious person, and I'd rather focus my efforts on photography or music or some other things like that. So why am I in Vegas? well, like I said, it's an adventure. I think also that I have a unique ability to provide answers to some things that others simply don't have the experience, time, or training for. Have I achieved my goal? Not really. I mean, I continue to look at this stuff and to try to publish information, but I find more and more every day that YouTube is more about entertainment and social connectivity than it is either about truth discovery or true understanding of something. And I find that the remoteness or anonymity and the anonymous nature of so much of it is kind of detrimental to relationships. And so even me here speaking to you, it's not a two-way thing, it's a one-way thing. And when you engage in a two-way thing, conversation on these chat stuff, I find it very limiting also. If I can't see you and I can't touch you and I can't look into your eyes as I'm talking to you, I think that there's a whole big piece of the equation that's missing and can lead to some pretty bizarre circumstances. It's so easy to get frustrated. It's so easy to get less than tolerant for other people, but I try to avoid that stuff. I do have hot buttons. One of my hot buttons is someone calling another person an idiot, because I believe that every person should have the best self-esteem that they can possibly be ingrained with. And if you have that, that's part of the big pieces of the battle to living a good life. And so I never let my kids call each other idiots, because I wanted each of them to have the best self-esteem that they could. Sometimes it sticks, sometimes it doesn't. You do your best and you end up what you end up with, because it is a mixture of nurture versus nature. One of my kids, isn't particularly to me the type of character I would like. Love him, love both of my boys. And the other is a little bit more like me, and we all get along fine. I just talk to the one who's more like me than I do the other. I've been married once, and only once, and I think that's enough for me. And not that I don't like ladies, because I do. But the breaking of a promise, which I felt was lifelong, just absolutely destroyed my faith in others' ability to make promises and stick with them. And that may be a little harsh. So I treat things a little bit more on a temporary basis these days. So let's see, what else would you like to know about Richard, aka Vegas October 1 Sounds? Well, I'm not done with my analysis on this subject called Vegas, not by a long shot. It's slow these days because of real life obligations. This coronavirus thing has really taken a punch out of myself and my mother, because we're kind of in the older generation. But and then of course the chaos in the political scene is really causing frustration, consternation, and aggravation. But I enjoy life. I have a pretty positive attitude about things, and I look forward to on another time sharing some more about myself with you. So have a good evening, and we'll see you sometime in the future on another video.